we bring in the retired Air Force Major General Don Alston, who's the former commander of the U.S. Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Force. Good to see you, sir. Thank you for your time on a weekend.
My pleasure.
It's interesting, obviously, what North Korea has done as they try to lay the groundwork for this meeting with President Trump. To what extent should we believe the pronouncements coming out of Kim Jong-un, and how significant are they?
Well, I think it's pretty productive that he makes these gestures. He's got a very important near-term objective, and that's to stand on the world stage next to the President of the United States. So I think he's going to certainly not do anything that is going to deliberately put that in jeopardy. And if he can make gestures of this somewhat consequential nature, they are reversible, so we wouldn't want to get overreact to this in too much of a positive way. But it's certainly an important gesture. When we get to the level of discussing reducing and ultimately getting him to give up his nuclear weapons, we're going to have to be worried about real capabilities and not just gestures and spoken intentions, because those can change overnight.
Your point about being reversible is a point well taken, and it almost reminds me of what President Trump himself said the other night when he was talking from his point of view about this meeting, saying, hey, if I go in there and things aren't working out well, I'll just walk out. I mean, he could reverse, that's his point of view at least. He could, not hang around for the meeting. The same way if Kim Jong-un says, I'm going to stop this testing, the moment he doesn't think things are going well, we could see the test come again, right?
Well, absolutely. And, I don't think it would be prudent to set too many preconditions before the meeting takes place. But at the same time, you and I have both been reading about what does denuclearization mean to Kim, or what does it mean to us. I think it's an absolute that it has to be the elimination of his nuclear weapons. So we might want to have to establish that right up front, because there's little redeeming value to meeting if we don't have a common objective in mind.
Right. You have to know what you want going in. That's a very, very good point. Let me have you listen for a moment to one of the advisors to the president, Mercedes Schlapp, because what the White House has been saying is that their campaign here of maximum pressure, as they call it, has really been what set this up. Here's Mercedes Schlapp.
You're going to need to stop building these nuclear sites. You're going to need to allow South Korea and the Americans to be able to have these military exercises. And it's because of the fact that he came up with, and his administration came up with, a very strategic solution in ensuring that there's this maximum pressure campaign on North Korea. These economic sanctions are hurting that country. And the mere fact that it wasn't done alone.
It wasn't done alone, General. To that point, which is just on the way out of the soundbite that we played, whether it's the Chinese or others helping out, what do you make of how this has all been set up to get us to this point?
Well, let's face it, prior to this, the approach by the regional players as well as the United States has been to let him bring the region into crisis and then negotiate his way to get a favorable outcome, change his behaviors only temporarily, and then go back to the behaviors that need to be corrected again. So I think that the approach that the administration has taken has absolutely deserves credit for bringing this to the point that we're at right now. So I believe that we need to retain the maximum pressure through this process, and until we see bona fide action by North Korea that are walking down the road that it's vital for the region and the world that he takes those steps.
And we'll know next month or early June how it all plays out. General, before we let you go, I do want to get your thoughts on one other important story as we have a minute or so left, and that's Syria. Finally, these UN inspectors have reached the chemical weapons facilities located in Douma in Syria, and it had taken them some time to do so. They've been delayed at first. Before we talk about it, the perspective from the State Department, here's Heather Nauert talking about what may have happened here. Here she is.
Russian officials have worked with the Syrian regime, we believe, to sanitize the locations of those suspected attacks and remove incriminating evidence of chemical weapons use.
So it took a week or so for these inspectors to get in, and now, to Heather Nauert's point, you wonder what they find when they do get in.
Right. And I think that, there's no doubt in my mind that the Russians and the Syrians are going to make this as murky as they can. Yeah. And so there'll be denials as we work through this. It'll be very interesting to see just what the team finds. and as they collect their evidence and they do their analysis, and that'll all be interesting to see how it plays out. But when we look back to the strike that the French, the United Kingdom, and the United States made against Assad's regime, it was measured, it was proportionate, it was violent. It absolutely sent a message to the regime and to the Russians that the world has got to enforce these norms against using chemical weapons, and that there's still room for additional escalation. So I fully expect that this is going to be very murky, and that's just the way I think the Russians and the Assad regime want it to be for the time being. And we'll just see how it goes.
That's the way we have to play it, I guess, because there's no other choice. Major General Don Alston, General, thanks.